Thank you very much, and welcome to TII here today. And I know we've met, I think, Peter, previously in Athlone, and of course a big campaign around the cycleway. So of course one of my big passions would be the Galway to Dublin cycleway, and that's progressing. And seeing the bridge been built, absolutely beautiful bridge that's literally, the sections are put in place. So I really look forward to that opening. And to the next section, I suppose part of my question might be around any potential timelines for the final section along there. I know the team are working very well in the Ballinasloe office. I might put my questions together if that's okay and ask a few together, but just around the tolls. So again, I live in Ballinasloe, so for me it's the tolls at Enfield, and of course when you're going to Galway it's Capitagal, so you're looking at the M4 and the M6. But am I correct in that you've stated 10 years, so come 2033 there will be no further tolls on the M4 and the M6 section, from what I understood from the summary, roughly?
11. No, I'm not saying there's no tolls. We're saying like the toll scheme is indefinite, the bylaws are indefinite. The contract for that toll concession, the PPP concession,
public-private partnership,
that comes to an end.
So there'll be a renegotiation at that time.
It reverts to state ownership, correct?
It reverts to state ownership. And the project, Bruce, that my colleague Colin Masterson mentioned earlier, is contained within the Climate Action Plan as part of the initiative that we'd be working with the department on to look at the entirety of the road network and the manner in which the state would most correctly, and indeed addressing issues of climate action and emissions, that it would be
how to be managed. But it's absolutely crucial because we need that motorway for industry and investment. Like, I'm fighting for that in the town of Ballinasloe. Like, I'm fighting to get companies into our IDA business park, and the commuters that get into Ballinasloe and go to work in Athlone or go to work in Galway or Dublin are using the motorway. And a lot of the reasons are that we don't have frequent Irish Rail, for example, which I know is outside of your remit, but we don't have the frequency in the West in terms of public transport. But I'm not even going to get into that part. I have one other question.
We've agreed, Senator Dolan, that we'll do a body work around you have all these PPPs over the next 30 years coming back into state ownership, and how exactly the state is going to approach dealing with that, the issue of tolls, the issue of climate change. So you're touching on something that we as a committee are going to look at.
Very good. That's wonderful to hear, and thank you so much, Chair. I might, if I may, just one final question actually. I know my colleague here has mentioned a number of projects, but I would have been there in October last year at, outside of Tulsk, when we're looking at the N5 Balladreen to Scramogue project, and I know that it was very difficult come March to hear of, I suppose, the receivership for that company that had won that tender at that time. But the investment at that time, from what I understand, the funds then went into receivership. So that was 34 kilometres, sort of going from the Balladreen to Scramogue, and it was going to bypass and sort of make safer that route close to French Park, Ballinagary, Tulsk and Strokestown. But then the funds were reallocated. Obviously, they had to be spent in year, I understand that. But you know, that was 47 million to the national roads, 23 million to roads protection, 10 million into inflationary pressures, and 14 million into other programmes. I suppose my question is around the tendering. Now, I know that went out to tender in April and the tender closed in May, but is there a timeline around that? And I know that's been done through the local authority.
And the tender didn't close in May. Like the date for receipt of tenders was originally set as 23rd of December, I think, but as requested by the tenderers, it's been extended. So I can't remember the date offhand, but I think it's in February now.
Currently still live then?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, so it's currently live until February. So is the anticipation that once the tender is won, that there will be funding allocated for this to progress next year?
Yes.
So this is a priority project for this to progress once the tender is won?
The government went through the decision gate associated with proceeding to construction, and that contract and that project was approved for construction.
Yes.
So
we
will continue to deliver on that approval. That's
absolutely fantastic news, because I just remember being there and the absolute joy, because it's such a dangerous stretch, and the fantastic part is that there's been funding for walkways and investment even in Rathcrohan, the site very close to Tulsk there, but the challenge has been really around the safety, and every single day it's just it is just a stretch, a real dangerous stretch.
So I think I'd like to take the opportunity to kind of acknowledge the kind of understanding of government in relation to it, because when you talked about your benefit to cost ratio, that was a difficult one, because we had to go 35 kilometres in length offline in order to avoid the archaeological
site of Rathcrohan.
Site at Rathcrohan. And so it wasn't an easy decision for government to say that's worthwhile. But
it's absolutely fantastic. If I might just let you know, under the outdoor recreational infrastructure, Rathcrohan and that site has won 445,000 to develop walkways. They have 60 protected sites in that area. There's over 300. It dates back to Neolithic, Iron Age, the Thornbow cooling. Actually, all dates, Queen Maeve. The opening chapter sets you in, Rathcrohan, and that's literally where Rathcrohan is. So all I can say to you is, by protecting our heritage and culture, you've done. And the government has invested in this as well. So just to have that dangerous stretch now, to have this project moved next year with Roscommon County Council is going to be absolutely crucial. So we would look at a timeline, I suppose, of that tender been decided roughly, hopefully around February, March next year.
The tenders will be in February.
And a decision time.
The date. How long it'll take to do the tender assessment and get to contract award. Sometimes these things can take some time because of, a variety of things have cropped up around tender clarifications and bonds and all sorts of things. So I don't want to give a definitive date, but generally kind of 3 months to get through that process is, so usually we'll do it.
Yeah, so May, June. So roughly half the budget would be allocated potentially in 2023 for construction if it was roughly around June.
We will allocate funding as required to meet the costs associated with the project. So depending on the time, we don't want to take money from other projects. If it's not the allocation will be tailored to meet the progress.
And a generous allocation this year from the projects that won, because this other project couldn't proceed. So I would guess that there's probably projects that have benefited this year from the funding that was reallocated as well.
We like to make the most use of, will make the most use of any funding available. So to do that, we move it around.
Thank you very much, Chair.